Okay, 7-4, number 4 is where I want to start. Something important is happening right here. The radical is by itself. We use the word isolated. Now, if that were you or me, that might be a bad thing, but not for a radical. Because if a radical is isolated, then we can get rid of the radical by doing what to both sides? Squaring both sides, right? This is going to lead me to 8 minus x equals what? 36. Solve it. Guess you will get a negative number. You will get a negative number for your answer. It's true. You get it. Several of you, I am going to guess, did something like this. Oops, sorry. You subtracted 8 from both sides.
Did you get negative 28?
And then you got negative x equals 28, and then you divided by negative 1, and you ended up with negative 28. Another way we could have handled this question, 8 minus x equals 36. We could have added the x to the other side. If we had added the x to the other side, what would it have become?
Negative. No.
If it's negative x on the left, what would it have been on the right?
Positive.
It would have been positive x. Then we could have subtracted 36, so we would have had 8 minus 36, or negative 28. So it would not matter which way you did the question. I am going to guess that a lot of you did it the first way. Most of us don't think about moving the x around unless we have to. Or unless our lawyer says we have to. Oh, sorry. Okay, don't worry. All right, if you're not paying alimony at this point, you don't have to worry about it. All right. So each time we come to these questions, I'm going to ask you, is the radical by itself? Is the radical isolated? Is the radical isolated? So if that's the case, then we can... Do we have any Top Gun fans here? Top Gun, seen the original?
Yeah,
You know, last period, nobody had seen the original movie. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I've seen it.
The 1985 original
Yeah,
Top Gun
what's
movie?
his name?
No.
Caitlin said she
No?
owns
Oh
it.
my goodness.
She said she owns it.
Oh my goodness. So, one of the phrases in that movie is, he talks about immediately switching to guns, okay? Because when missiles aren't working, he immediately switches to guns. So when I see the radical, I immediately switch to guns. Square both sides, okay? Anyway, so, can't wait for this next one to come out. Solve it, go. Come on. We squared both sides. Has already got an answer for me. Already done this question. Come on. Stay with me. Square both sides. 2x, so we get 2x minus 5. The radical of the square cancel. I got it. Well, you switched it from a minus to a plus.
Right.
And 3 squared is not 6.
Teacher.
That's right.
minus, I just added the 5. Oh, wait, what?
I don't want to hear
3
excuses.
squared is how much?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
Oh,
I knew you were wrong.
I thought, yeah.
I did.
You were wrong.
Yes, good answer. So 2x minus 5 equals 9. X does equal 7, that's true. Because if we add 5 to both sides, we get 14. 2x equals 14. And then divide by 2, we get 7. So if the radical is isolated, that is a gift-wrapped problem for you. It's pretty easy. Square both sides and do some basic algebra stuff that you've done a long time ago. What if the radical is not isolated? What if the radical is not by itself? Then you have to do a little bit of algebra before you can square both sides. So what would you like to do to get the radical by itself? No, we're not giving up.
Would you square it?
We can't square it yet. What? Divide by 2. That's an excellent choice, because now the radical will be by itself. The square root of x is equal to 10. And now what we were doing before, where we squared both sides, is going to complete the process. Or at least get us a lot closer. In this case, it will actually finish the question for us. So what do we get? X equals 100. But we had to get the radical by itself before we could square both sides. Look at question 1. Is the radical by itself? And yes, the answer to your question is that's exactly what I would do. The radical's not by itself, so the suggestion I had from up front was add 4 to both sides. If we add 4 to both sides, what do we end up with? Radical 3y plus 3 equals 6.
Wait, then we got to square it, right?
Yep. Now you got it. Square both sides. Keep going with the question. Find me an answer.
Y equals 11.
You said X. So 3y plus 3 equals 36. Then you subtracted 3 from both sides and got 3y equals 33. And I saw a lot of you saying divide by 3, and you ended up with 11. Now, in the instructions for this question, it says check for extraneous solutions. And we talked about this last semester, how extraneous has the word extra in it. I'd like to give you a rule for how you know when you actually need to check. You know, every math teacher in the world wants to say, oh, you should always plug your answers back in to check if they work. But most of you wouldn't do that even if you had to. So you don't like to do that. So I would like to tell you when you do need to check. Okay? Here's the rule that you should look for. Is there a variable outside the radical? Okay, so if I say yes, then I have to check. If I say no, no check. Okay? Might be credit card or cash, but there will be no check. Gee whiz. Good stuff here, people. We have to ask ourselves, is there a variable outside the radical? That's the key thing that you're looking for whether you actually really need to plug it in. Now, could I try to trick you and create a situation where there is absolutely no solution to the question? Yes, I could, but I promise you I won't. I mean, pinky swear. Okay? And how would I do that? If I had changed this question, let's suppose this question looked like this. The square root of 3y plus 3. Let's say, plus 4 equals 2. Let's say I had just changed that one little sign right there to a plus. What's the first thing you would have done to both sides of the equation? Just look at it. Don't write it down. Just look at it. Tell me. Okay, this is distracting people. I need to know, what would you do to both sides of that? What's the first thing you do to get the radical by itself? You'd subtract 4, right? So what is 2 take away 4? Negative 2. So we got the square root of something equaling a negative number. That's a problem. And that would be a no solution situation. But I'm not going to put you in that situation. Okay? So I'm not going to throw something at you like that. So the truth of the matter is, folks, the rule you need to look for is there a variable outside the radical? Okay? Let's do question 3. Before we begin question 3, can you tell me if we're going to need to check for extraneous solutions? Is there a variable outside the radical?
Yes.
No, the only variable I see is inside the radical. So there is no variable that's outside the radical that I would need to worry about. So when you get done with this question, which should take you all of about 10 seconds, you really will not need to check for extraneous solutions. Way too fast. What are the 2 things that you need to do to get the radical by itself? Divide by 2, that'll be my second step. What's my first step? Add 16. Then you want to do that divide by 2 you suggested. So, find me my answer. Should be bigger than 100. 169, that's true if you square both sides. So we had to do 2 things to get the radical by itself, and then we could find that answer. But we did not need to check for extraneous solutions. I don't think we need to go through this question 6, but answer me one question. If you were to go through this question, would you need to check for extraneous solutions, yes or no? No, there's no radical, there's no variable outside the radical. We'll skip that question and that question for right now. Jump down to number 9. Before you begin this question, will we need to check for extraneous solutions? Is there a variable outside the radical? Well, I see one right there. Whoa, yeah. Yes, some trickery, right. Oh, well.
I thought you pinky swore.
Pinky swore what? I said there wouldn't be a no solution. I didn't say there wouldn't be one where you didn't have to check.
You didn't lie.
Okay. No. She just did it on her own. We need to get that radical by itself. What's the first thing and the only thing I need to do to get the radical by itself? We need to subtract 3. Subtract 3. Okay, now, if I do that, it says x minus 3 equals square root 2x minus 6. Is everybody with me to this point? We got the radical by itself. How do you get rid of the radical? How do we get rid of the radical? Square both sides. Whoops. Square it. Now, be careful on the left side. Be careful on the left side. Because you're dealing with x minus 3 times x minus 3. Draw your arrows. Use a box. Line them up over the top of each other. Whichever way you like to do your foil. X squared is involved, yes. Okay, which way do you like to do your foil? Do you like to draw arrows? Do you like to do a box? Do you like to line them up over the top of each other? Arrows? Well, then start drawing arrows. X times x, x times negative 3 times x, negative 3 times negative 3. If whichever way you like to do it, I don't care. There is an x squared involved, that's true. If you don't know what to do after this step, at least get me the x minus 3 times the x minus 3 on the left side and then stop. Well, I agree with you that the outside would give me minus 3x, right? What did the insides give me? That's another minus 3x, right? So what's minus 3x? What's minus 3x? Negative 6. And then negative 3 times negative 3. Okay, write that down. Yeah. Combine those two like terms into them. You should at least have this on your left side. X squared minus 6x plus 9. Anybody not understand how we got the left side so far? Because if you don't understand that, I want to help before we move on. I'm going to suggest that we move these two things to the other side of the equation so that we have 0 on this side. So what will we have if we move the 2x to the other side? X squared minus 8x, right. 9 plus 6 is how much? Okay, now, your choices at this point are to factor it or to use the quadratic formula. I think factoring would be nicer, but if you don't like factoring, you could use the quadratic formula. Take your favorite pick and go. Factor it or use the quadratic formula.
Are you talking about the
GCF, so I can't pull anything out of all three terms. But yes, we're going to split it up into two parentheses, x and x. They multiply together to give me 15. They add up to -8. They both have to be minuses. Good. Now, yes, I like how you're setting them equal to 0. I like the two answers that are possible. That's the factory. Possible answers. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve it. Make them both minuses. Otherwise you won't get -8. So a lot of you are coming up with x minus 3 and x minus 5. Okay? If you set each one of them to equal to 0. Now, I like that little trick you did over here on my right. I like how you set them equal to 0 like that. That was just a shorthand notation. That was a shorthand notation. I like that. It, without having to copy it all down again.
It's just a little.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. So if x minus 3 equals 0, what's one possible value of x? Positive 3. If x minus 5 equals 0, what's a possible value of x? Okay, now you said at the beginning of this question there was a variable outside the radical, so I would actually have to check for extraneous solutions. So when I said possible solutions of 3 and 5, I meant it. I don't know for sure until I actually spend the time and go back to the beginning. 3 equals the square root of 2 times 3 minus 6 plus 3. Does the left side equal the right side? Start working it out and tell me if the left side equals the right side. What's under the radical? 0. So this does. It has 3 on the left and 3 on the right, so that checks out. So I know that 3 is a good answer. So now we're going to check the other one. 5 equals the square root of 2 times 5 minus 6 plus 3. Does the right side give me 5? Does the right side give me 5? I got one vote for yes. Does the right side give me 5? So what's under the radical if the right side's 5? 4, right? 10 minus 6 is 4. Okay. So it does work out. Several of you were finding, so both answers have. Sometimes one answer will work and the other one won't. Okay, go down to 12. I see a variable outside the radical. So this is a similar check for extraneous solutions situation. Is the radical by itself? Yes or no? Is the radical by itself? Yes. So what can we do? Immediately square it. Which that's easy on the left side. What's on the right side? No. Pick your favorite method. Yes, Miss Clark, you're right. Pick your favorite method of multiplying those two things together, because that's what squaring it means. Multiply it times itself. That side's okay. That side's yeah, what'd you get on the right side? Good. Do we notice anything on both sides of the equations that we can get rid of? Ah, the x squareds. This becomes a lot easier problem. I can now subtract 1 and get 2x equals 18. So what does 1x equal? 9. Now, if you want to go back and plug it in, 9 squared plus 19, take the square root. And on the other side, 9 plus 1, we end up with the square 81 plus 19, that's the square root of 100. Is the square root of 100 equal to 10?
Yes.
Ding, 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 we got a good answer. There was only one possible answer there, and it worked. Only if it's a bad answer and you should have gotten rid of it. So what she said is, should I roll the dice? Okay, question 11. Question 11, I'm going to mark this as extra credit. Okay. I would venture to say most of you in this room do not want to touch number 11. I will describe to you why. Now, it's different from question 10. If I push this term to the other side, what does it become? If I push this term to the other side, what does it become? Positive radical y minus 5. Okay? That's true. And then it would be gone. So we have a radical all by itself. What are we allowed to do with this radical to get rid of the radical? What have we done every time you get rid of the square root? Square both sides. Okay, but now you come over here and you square this. Okay, now, if I have to square this, what is 6 times, if I write this out twice, and I start drawing the arrows, or maybe I make a box, or whatever I like to do, 6 times 6 is easy, right? 36. Radical y minus 5 times radical y minus 5. That's just y minus 5. The problem is when you do your insides and outsides, you're left with a radical. Which means this person has to isolate the radical that's now left on this side, get everything else moved to the other side, and then square both sides a second time. Most of you are not going to do that. That's why I'm not requiring this question from you. However, question 10 is different. Question 10 is not the same. So 11 would be an extra credit question because you'd have to square it twice eventually. But that's not, 10 is not as difficult as that. Now you're going to use the exact same logic of moving that term to the other side. And what would you get if you did? Square root of 10y plus 2 equals what? Isn't it just 9y plus 5?
Yeah.
Okay, solve it. Do what you know that you should do to get rid of a square root.
How did you get rid of the negative part?
Because I added that term to the other side. Just like if it said minus 5 and we would add 5 to the other side. Because when you bring it to the other side of the equation, it changes signs, right? Okay. So the sign in front of that radical changed from a negative to a positive. reason this question was easier than the number 11 was because when you squared both sides, you got rid of all the radicals. And it became much easier for you to solve. Back to your Algebra 1 days. I know, it'd be so nice. Yes. Because then I would get an A and I wouldn't have to think. Yeah. Okay, so what do we end up with? Several of you got 3. You are correct.
Hold on. Wait, what?
So all we did was we subtracted 9y. And we subtracted 2. So that left us with 1y on the left and 3 on the right. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's wander our way back up here. There's a couple that we need to do. 7. Question 7. Believe it or not, the part I just circled in green, that's a radical. We talked about how fractional exponents go with radicals, so the part I just circled in green is a radical. So my question to you is this: is the radical by itself? No. Isolate it by doing what? How do we get it by itself? Divide by 7. Very similar to the things we've done before. Awesome. Okay, now. Look at that fractional exponent and tell me what radical are we dealing with? Which radical are we dealing with? Is it a square root, a cube root, a fourth root, a fifth root, a sixth root, a seventh root?
Is it
Guess and check does not get you any credit.
Dude, I already know. I know with that. I know with that.
And then you won't get any credit. Okay, fantastic. How about this? I'll give you half a point out of 4.
Sweet.
Okay. So, I did have somebody guess and check the correct answer here. So, I'm just... You didn't guess.
No.
Really? Let me guess. You did it in your head. Yeah, sure. Okay, which radical are we dealing with? Square root, cube root, fourth root, fifth root, sixth root. I showed you a diagram of a tree, which helped you understand where the power is and where the roots are. Look at the fractional exponent and tell me whether we're dealing with a square root, a cube root, a fourth root, a fifth root, or sixth root. It is a square root. Okay, so if I were to rewrite this, I could rewrite it as the square root of x minus 8 to what power? The third power. Now, there is another way if that's what you're asking me, but I think this would help a lot of people. How do we get rid of a square root?
By
Squaring both sides, right? So now we have x minus 8 all to the third power equals, what is 8 squared again? 64. 2 more steps to get the correct answer here. 2 more steps to get the correct answer. Think about what you need to do to get rid of a third power. Think of what you need to do to get rid of a third power.
put before class?
No. You put a plus in there.
Oh, it's so
And so
solid.
it saw that.
Hold on.
Knew that they would know.
Do you never say right here? Yeah, it's a 12. I got it's 12.
Yeah, look at this.
Alright.
That's why we do that.
Yeah.
We're both like,
No clue.
yeah, we're both like, we can guess.
Cube root.
It's almost
So what's the cube root of 64?
So that's why we're both like, yeah, we can guess. We know.
Yeah, okay. As I said,
like,
letting someone else do your work is not. If you took the cube root of both sides, you got x minus 8 equals what? What's the cube root of 64? 4. And then you can add 8 to both sides. And so if I don't see that kind of work, you ain't getting credit. I've been checking all day, so let's do question 8. Question 8. Now, a spherical water tank holds 10,000 cubic feet of water. Does that, what is this feet cubed? Is that a unit, or is it telling me that I'm supposed to take 10,000 times 10,000 times 10,000? It is a unit. Okay, do not think that that means I have to raise it to the third power. Okay, so we have 10,000 cubic feet of water. That is the volume. They've given me this cool formula to use. So walk me through solving this without Snapchat.
So would you do 10,000 divided by 6?
Okay, so, no, but I like your thinking. We do need to get this thing. We need to deal with that thing first. What do we need to do to get rid of that thing? Multiply by its reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by 6 over pi. So, what is 10,000 times 6 over pi? It's going to be an ugly number, folks. You basically have 60,000 divided by pi. Got your calculator? Calculator. Why don't you just leave it alone?
He got you. Wait, what did you say?
Get your own. Get your own.
I'll see you after class.
Come on, yes. Why don't you at me at Walmart, and then we'll look for the same calculator for $13.
We just say.
Okay, just tell me what's the one thing I would have to do after that to get the third power gone. Take the cube root. And if you take the cube root, you end up with 26.7 as your diameter.
yes, it's 12.
Which is 12. 12. 12. Yeah. When in doubt, the answer's 12. See ya.